Okay, guys, we're going to get started. If you want to laden up your serviettes, there's plenty of food. Huge thanks to Coles at Norwood. Wouldn't normally do this, but they've gone over and above. There's a big story behind that. But grab some plates, some food from there, and then come and grab a seat. Thank you. Yeah. The story was. I placed the order on Friday. Got a text yesterday at 2 o'clock saying your food's set to go. Got a text now at 3 o'clock. Got a text at 40 past Thursday, 40 past. No indications. Coles Norwood.
Very nice. Better than Subway. We must tell a story.
Just push it on time. Okay, if you want to come a little bit further forward if you're towards the back as well. I'll use the microphone anyway, and we are recording this session because there's about 5 people I'm aware of who can't make it today. But we're about to get started. Yeah, I'll close the door. Well, welcome. Great to have you with us. And the idea of this is a fairly simple, straightforward sort of training, but covering quite a few different things. Is this too loud, or is it okay? Maybe if you can turn me down a tad, Jimmy, if that's helpful, as long as it's recorded, that's great. On the screen behind, and I apologize for some of this small text, but just a quick little run through. We're going to look at briefly the team structure and leaders. Wendy is going to share a short segment on whom we are as AACC. If someone comes, visits for the first time, so tell us more about this church, then it's really helpful to understand. I mean, each of us have our own stories, but helpful to understand maybe some of the key things to share in that. Then we're going to look at welcoming people. Regulars, visitors, guests, newcomers, what to say, what not to say. Both John and Michael are going to share some thoughts. And then we've got a bit of what does it mean to be creating a welcoming environment? As we talked about a couple of weeks ago, part of the role of the welcome team is actually making sure the church is set up well. Now, you're not going to have to be lugging chairs around, but there are some practical things. And so we've put a bit of a checklist together that I'll hand out a bit later. You can see about that. Then we're going to talk briefly about using the welcome desk, a bit of a walkthrough maybe if we need to, and then finish with some questions and answers. So any questions before we start? No? Excellent. Okay, we're planning to finish by 1:30. If you are getting really peckish, feel free to go and grab some more food. Don't feel that you have to wait until the meeting's finished. I won't be offended, unless you walk out, in which case I probably will be offended. Okay, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, that you are the one who welcomes us. And that as we spend this time together exploring and being trained in and maybe asking some questions about this new ministry, that you would allow us to be able to enter into that and to be able to understand and to see some of your heart for people here. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so firstly, team structure and leaders. as part of my role as one of the pastors here, will be overseeing the ministry. But we've asked both John Moon and Michael Cheong to sort of head the ministry up from a very practical perspective in terms of trying to work through what it means to be having a system that works. And as I've got to know the both of them over the few months that I've been here, I've just really been impressed by their servant heart and their attitude to be able to do that. And I've done a couple of reference checks, had a chat with your life group leader and all those sorts of things, and just been delighted with what they've said in terms of attention to detail. So you're on notice. Attention to detail and all these sorts of things, but delighted to have the two of you with the LT's blessing as well to be heading up this aspect and working with me and overseeing the practical outworking of some of these things. What we are looking to do is have 4 to 6 teams, depending on the final number. And what I might just say here as well is there's a few faces here who weren't able to be at the interest meeting a couple of weeks ago. So if you weren't at that or you didn't sign up, we had a QR code. And unfortunately, I'm not prepared with that same QR code today. But if you did not actually click on that QR code and you would like to be involved, please make your way before the end of today to see either John or Michael and give them your name. And I'd also ask, what we're looking to do is, and we'll talk about some of the structure in a minute, but the teams are for 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Now, what I mean by that is the one team of maybe 7 or 8 people will be on for a Sunday. Some people in that team will be looking after the 9 a.m. Others in that team will be looking after the 11 a.m. So one individual does not do both, but the team does both. Does that make sense? But we need to know what your preference is, whether it's 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. We can't always guarantee to make that happen. That'll be on John and Michael to work that out. So it may be that if you're a regular 9 a.m.er, there may be a particular week when we might ask you to come to the 11 a.m. or the 11 a.m.er to the 9 a.m. as well, just because we've got to get that balance in, okay? So Michael and John will work with that, and it will always be consultative, but we would like to know your preference. So if you can, again, make sure that they are aware of that, and over this next week or so, they're going to be putting teams together. Each team will have what we're calling the team leader. The language is not particularly important, but it's essentially a key person. There's a bit of a pun there, because that key person will have access to a key to be able to open up in the mornings, okay? Mostly this place will already have been opened up by the worship team, so you don't have to get here to open up for them at 8 a.m., but there will be other buildings that will need to be opened. So that key person will have access to a key and a code to be able to open up the ministry center as well. The practicalities of that we will talk about with those key people, and that will be, again, Michael and John will be working out who they are. If you have a particular desire and say, I would love to be that person who is responsible for a team, then do please have a chat with John and Michael and let them know that. We currently have enough for about 4 teams. We're looking to expand. I'd like to have 6, so that then you are on as a team once every 6 weeks. And as I said, we will finalize the teams in the next week or so. So if you know of someone else who isn't here, and I know there's about 4 or 5 people who aren't here, so we're recording the session. If you know of someone who you think they would be great at this, please say, you would be great at this, and encourage them to get in touch with either myself or with John and Michael, and we can find a way to get them involved. Wendy, can I hand over to you to share a little bit about who we are as AACC? Thank you. Oh, and if you don't know, Wendy and I did not message each other this morning and saying, which shirt are you wearing?
Melvin didn't get the memo, though, when he got up there. Okay. So very quickly, who we are as AACC, as a church. Now, that's probably a question you will get asked. What is the church like? How did the church begin? But before I start there, if I asked you the question, who we are as a church, what would come to your mind? How would you describe AACC? A family church, okay. And what do you mean by family? Okay, with mom, dad, grandparents, all of that, okay. Intergenerational, yeah, across generations. Multigenerational, yep. Multicultural, okay? A Christian church, thank you. A loving and a caring church. Yeah, we are interdenominational. We do not belong to any one particular denomination. Okay, so these are all right answers because who AACC is seen through your own lens and your own experience of who AACC is. Okay, and I think if you've had a bad experience with AACC, you hopefully wouldn't be at this meeting. But I think when people ask, what kind of church are you, who are you, I think it's better to genuinely share what you feel and know to be true from your heart. They don't actually ask huge theological questions the first time they are here. However, some of them do ask, like, are you belonging to a denomination? And so one of the things that I say to people is, no, we do not belong to a denomination, but we work with many of the other churches in this area. And if you want to liken us to a particular denomination, we're probably closer to the Baptist because we are a congregational model where we have a structure, but most important decisions go back to the congregation and we vote on it. So it's not just a few pastors making a decision or the church leadership team making a decision, but we do our best to draw in the congregation and to bring things to the congregation. I think that is slightly different to some of the other churches around us that run their structure differently. I think that's one of the distinctiveness. The other one I also say is to people is because we're not a denomination, it makes a place for any Christian to actually come and be a part of us. So I usually say in our congregation, there are people from the Catholic background. In our congregation, there may be people from Pentecostal backgrounds. But I think one of the things that we focus on is the worship of Christ. Okay? So when they go deeper, sometimes they will ask me about communion, about baptism and things like that. And I'd say, we believe in those things, but how we do them or how we celebrate them might be a little different than how you have experienced it. Okay? So we do believe in baptism, we do believe in communion, we do believe in baby dedications and all of that, but how we express it in AACC may be different to how they, especially if you're coming from a traditional church, that is one of the questions they will ask. Okay? So when I am outside with other church leaders, I describe AACC as just a Christian church, like Michael said, but probably not holding to any one particular denomination because we actually have different denominations flavoring our church. And sometimes I will use the example of Pastor David Buxton coming from the Uniting, Melvin coming from an Assemblies of God background, myself coming from an Anglican and previously Presbyterian. So that gives them a feel. So when they ask you what kind of a church, they have an agenda, they have a lens that you have to try to fit in. You can ask them a question back. What do you mean? Okay? But I think if you can tell them who we are. So I think that the three things that I hold on to, which seems to go across very well, is the intergenerational. So we do have a children's ministry, a youth ministry, so intergenerational. Interdenominational, I've just expressed that. And multicultural. I never used to think we are multicultural. I thought we were all a bunch of Asians. But the lens from the outside looking at our church has been described as multicultural. So while I personally think we are becoming more multicultural as more people are coming in, I think for the wider Australian society, we seem to be multicultural. Okay, so I say that we are a multicultural team. There are actually 7 or 9 DNAs or values and beliefs that comes to mind very quickly that is on the church website. And if I asked you, I'm glad a few people have read it. But if I asked you very quickly, the few things that will come to mind is all generations all together is one of our values that is intergenerational. The other one that will come very quickly to you is generous hospitality. I think we've always been affirmed for a church that is, good at hospitality, and that's not about the food. It's about the welcome that people have had when they come. The other one is servant leadership, willing service, which is what you are doing. So when people do ask you for values and beliefs, can you get on the website and have a quick look? I know we've preached about it in the past. If you can have a quick look on about it. And I think some of the values that resonates with you will be the value that comes up very quickly to who you are as a person. The only other thing that I would say is, I think thinking larger than yourself. So I was just looking at the younger folks in our midst. You will probably tell them about grip and fresh very eloquently, but probably not knowing the rest of the church. So I think one of the ways to get past that, because you are upfront, is actually to take the time to widen your relationship circles, because when they're coming to me, they're not asking me about worship ministry. They're not asking me about my job as a senior pastor. They're not asking you about grip or fresh. They're asking us about a larger church cohort. So it'll be important for us to stay informed as to who we are as AACC, talking about all the ministries. And one of it here is also passionate outreach, and to include in that our work in Kilburn and community outreaches. Okay? Thank you, David.
Thank you, Wendy. Any questions from Wendy? If something comes to mind, feel free to have a quick chat afterwards. And I might say also that sense of welcome, I want to affirm that as well. I know when we first visited, knowing that we were looking to apply for the role, that I was looking to apply for the role, as we visited as a family, there were only a couple of people who were aware. And yet the welcome that we received was huge. And especially for our family, our younger kids, they were surrounded by many of the young adults who actually connected with them. And it wasn't that awkward 5-minute, 30-second, nice to meet you, and then go and see your friends. They actually hung around. And that actually meant a significant amount to us as a family, and really encouraged us as we continued going through the process. Okay, the next one, and I think, I've left my clicker somewhere. Help, can somebody advance the slide, please? I've probably left the clicker on the desk at the back. In fact, I have. Would you mind, please, Kate? Thank you. A couple of key things, just to work through some practicalities. If you do not recognize people and you suspect that they are new, one thing perhaps not to say. Sorry, Kate, I've left it on the table, the welcome desk table. One thing perhaps not to say is, hi, are you new here? Because firstly, if they are, it puts them on the defensive. Am I that obvious? And secondly, they may not be new. They may have been coming for 8 or 9 years and you haven't seen them. And I've just noticed I've spilt juice, mayonnaise all down my front. Yummy, thank you. So what I tend to say is, hi, I'm David. I'm not sure I've met you before, which is generally the truth, unless my memory, which it does sometimes play up, unless I have met them before and I said the same to them 2 weeks ago. But, as it may, that's what I tend to use. It's lovely to meet you here. Tell me a little bit about yourself, or ask a couple of those sorts of inviting questions. And just a little tip as well. If they say, hi, yes, I'm Fred, or whatever, then say, hi, Fred, nice to meet you. You actually use their name back to them immediately. And that's not just a nice, polite thing to do, but it actually reaffirms in your mind that sort of those connections between the face that you're looking at and the name. Okay, just a little bit of a hint there for you, okay? Sometimes we have people who come to us who may be more comfortable speaking Chinese. And one of the things that we're hoping to do in our teams is to have a Chinese speaker on each team. So that then if their English is a little bit difficult, to be able to say, would you like to speak to somebody in Chinese, which would probably be the default language that we'd go to. So that's part of what we're hoping to do there as well. Answer any questions they may have fairly quickly, because for the welcoming people, you're generally going to be at the door, okay? Either here or for the 11 a.m. at the ministry hall as well. So fairly quickly, and then you can say, if you'd like to find me afterwards, this is where I'll be afterwards. So they can then think about that and come back and ask other questions. If they need help finding a seat, then that's part of your role as well. Would you like me to help finding a seat? And generally that's not going to be an issue until just before 11 o'clock. And a little interesting hint here, most people who are visiting will be here by 1:45. And they'll be looking around, they'll be thinking, where is everybody? So not many people who are new are coming right at the end. That being said, regulars and other people will also need help finding a seat. So part of your role will be part of that. And you'll see John and Michael and various others mirroring that each week. Try not to clog up the doorway. So if you're caught up in conversation, just move to the side so that other people can come through, just practical things. But one key thing is to try and connect people with a leader or with another regular person. And I say generally try and aim for someone of the same gender or the same sort of age. It's not always possible, but the idea there is when people are coming, they're looking to connect in some shape or form. And if you can connect them with somebody else, then at a very practical level, you can get back to the door and welcome in others that come in, but also you've introduced them to somebody. And as a whole church, you know, we do pretty good at this, but it's not a bad thing to be reminded as a whole church of what it means to be a welcoming community, what it means to be reaching out to others, to looking out for others who we may not recognize. We can offer a visitor's card, and they will be at the welcome desk at the back. And they can either fill that in at the beginning, or they can take it with them, fill them out during the service, drop it back at the end. Also, if you do have someone who is new, it would be a great idea to actually make sure that you go and connect with them afterwards. And maybe not ask, how did you find it? Because they may find, you know what, I really wasn't expecting that, or they may feel that they have to say, oh, it was good, where they're really thinking, what is this place? I'm not coming back. Look, I don't know, but I think what you could say is, well, a whole variety of things. Any ideas what might be a helpful thing to be able to say to connect afterwards? Can I make you a coffee? Or can I bring you through to a coffee or something like that? Spot on. Okay. Maybe this is why I'm doing the training, not Pastor Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. People will come back if they have a sense of welcome and they understand and feel that they are embraced and this is a place where they can belong. And part of that is exactly what you were saying, Yap, is, you know, can I bring you through and get a cup of coffee and then sit down and introduce them to some other people? Hi, this is Fred. Fred came here a few months ago, but he's decided to come back. Fred, tell us a little bit about yourself. Or you could introduce a little bit about yourself. So there's different ways to connect. We've also got a welcome pack, and I should note we're in the process of revamping that, and come the 5th of May, which is in 2 weeks, when we're launching this, we will have a new welcome pack. Now, I say that because the existing welcome pack has some helpful information, but it also has a few gaps, and we're aware of that, and we want to try and fill that out. What I would encourage you to do is, when you are rostered on for your first time, grab a welcome pack, open it as a team, look through it, note what's in there. Okay, so that you, if somebody says, oh, I saw this in the welcome pack, you know, you're not trying to read it and think, no, what on earth is this that they've presented me with? You've actually got an understanding of that. We will try and make that available electronically as well. So we'll try and do all these things that will help you out. Key things to try and avoid. Try and avoid getting caught up in lengthy conversations, especially with friends. If you have a position at the front and somebody comes in and you wanted to catch them up about something, please don't do it when you're on duty. You might say, oh, can I catch you afterwards about this? But right now, I'm welcoming people, okay? It can be quite disconcerting if you are walking into a place and the people who are supposed to be welcoming you are engaged in wonderful conversation with each other, reminiscing about a particular event over the last week, or trying to make plans to catch up, and they just don't take notice of you. Your role is to be that front line. Don't ask too many questions of newcomers, visitors. Hugging, kissing, I'd like to think that's not something that you would default to as a natural, but just put it in there anyway. Don't leave the entrance unattended, and don't get too distracted with tasks. And there will be some things to do, but the primary role is that of welcoming. If the chairs are a little bit wonky, or a particular fan isn't turned on, it's important to do that, but it's more important that people who come are given a sense of welcome. Okay, I've got their volunteers for a role play, but we're probably not going to do that in the interest of time, unless somebody really wants to be able to come up here as a welcomer, and someone really wants to come up here as a newcomer and try that out. But I'm not seeing a huge amount of volunteers on that one, so we might give that one a skip. I'm going to ask John and Michael to both come up. John and Michael have been doing this role for many years, and I've asked them to share a little bit about their... Indeed. A little bit about their own heart, about why they love welcoming, what do they love about the ministry, but also a couple of top tips as well. So you've got maybe a couple of minutes each or something like that. Okay.
I think... Just speak it up. He said most of the things you've got to do anyway is just be welcoming, be open-minded with people. He asked me why I do this sort of thing. And I think it's taking ownership of the church itself. And just loving the congregation and loving people that come through the door. I think it just boils down to that, Christ's love, and just share it out among people that come in the door. And it's just as simple as that. The rest of the things we do is just materialistic, but after a while people get used to doing that, and yeah, just do that.
Thank you. Michael, come here so the camera can catch you as well.
Well, thank you. So many young people turning up, which is really encouraging. And also young people at heart, okay? Yeah, this ministry, a lot of people do not like to do because it's like a background job. People tend to like, the front-end job, you see. But this job is actually very important. It serves as the foundation of the church. Especially when you're welcoming people, that serve as a first impression for new people to come in, and they can feel the warmness in the church. Sometimes you tend to make conversation with young people, with newcomers, and make them feel welcome. You gotta, judge. Sometimes in a sanctuary, tend to be like, shorten the conversation as much as possible so that they can come to the church, continue with the worship. For ministry hall, you may have a bit of a space before you get into the ministry hall, where you can have a bit of a chit chat. That's where you identify any newcomers, or maybe grab their name, had a bit of a short conversation before you get them in. Yeah, but most of the time, especially in the sanctuary hall, say good morning to them and then show them the seat. And if you can, identify them, like what Pastor said before, identify them, get someone who's at that age to talk to them later. Yeah, they may stay or they may not stay after the service, but if you can, after the service, approach them as early as possible, have a bit of a chit-chat, get their names, so that, you make them feel they are important. They are well looked after, Hopefully they will come back next time. And also sometimes when you see someone who are not really new, they have been here a couple of times, and a lot of times they are alone. Especially when you see some OCFer or some, I saw a couple of OCFer, they were alone by themselves. They don't have anyone to talk to. Maybe after service, approach them and have a bit of a chit chat with them and get to know them. I saw a number of times when some of them, especially when we have the sausage sizzle, they were like at the corner having their sausages. No one approached them, so go have a chat with them, and identify the name. I know it's a bit daunting sometimes. You get to meet so many people, and a bit overwhelmed, see. But over the time, you get to used to it, and then you will slowly maybe able to identify like, oh, this has been here a couple of times. These are new people. Then you will better manage them. New people or maybe get a pastor to talk to him or talk to her later after the service, or get some senior to talk to them. You may not be the one who do all the talking most of the time. Get someone along. It's better to have a group of people. Go over to that person, make him or her feel welcome. That'll be good. That'll be outstanding. Yeah. That's all.
Thank you, both of you. Fantastic. I think they've highlighted quite a few important things there. That sense of connection that I mentioned earlier is super important. That sense of actually finding somebody else that you can talk with, because ultimately we belong to a family together. And ultimately we want to be able to make connections with people and understand and find out a little bit about different people. One of the other things as well that just came to mind as Michael, as you were sharing, about afterwards connecting with people and maybe seeing people alone. And this is actually true for the whole church, but you guys are the ones getting the training today. Even if your team is not on, that doesn't mean that you aren't able to look out for someone else. Keep an eye out for somebody else. Seeing somebody on their own at the sausage sizzle, enjoying a sausage and looking around, trying to work out what's going on. Okay? Just because you're not on, don't feel, well, that's not my job today. Okay? Each of us have different roles in life. Just because I clock off at the end of a Sunday doesn't mean that if somebody rings me on Monday morning that I refuse to talk with them and say, nah, I'm not a pastor today. We still have roles to play in all of that. Okay, any questions on the welcoming side of things in terms of welcoming people before we move on to the next part, which is more about welcoming environment? Yes, yeah. Sorry. Yes.
During the weeks when we're not serving, maybe we don't sit with our usual group, sit so that there's an empty seat. So whenever a welcomer needs to sit someone next to someone that they know, there's a space for them to sit.
Tremendous, thank you. And can I just also ask now, I'm going to ask a couple of people if they can hand out some of these. Thank you, David, maybe split in 2 or 3. This is a bit of a checklist. Now, part of who I am is a bit of a details person. So forgive the fact that we have a checklist. This is not something that you need to take home and memorize by any shape or form. And please don't be off-put by the number of things on here. There's a side for the 9 a.m. and a side for the 11. This is also draft. It may change or get tweaked slightly, but the essence of it all is in here. We're just going to step through very briefly some of the things that need to be done from a practical point of view. And as I mentioned before, a lot of this is currently done by both Mei Ching and Elaine. But actually going forward, and the 5th of May will be the first week where this happens, they will actually not be officially on deck on Sunday mornings, okay? That allows them to be able to enjoy the worship, enjoy the sense of community, connect with people without officially being on deck. Okay, so some of the things that they do will happen during the week, and other parts of it will need to happen on the morning. So we're just going to very quickly go through this, and some of the stuff is duplicated. But before the service, and I've put right at the top there, 8:40 is basically, we need 2 people at the desk, whether everything is completely tidy or not, by 8:40. Each team will need to work out, in conjunction with John and Michael, what time to get there in the morning, but no later than 8:30, because there's things that need to be done. We're thinking probably around 8:15 will be good. And for the first few weeks, John has already said that he's happy to be around and to be a reference point for people if they have any questions on that. The team leader, that's the TL, will grab the key and the code, and we can talk about that later. Open up the buildings that haven't been opened, including the playground and the toilets, and make sure the whole team that the outdoor area is tidy. Generally speaking, it is. But just if a bit of litter or whatever has flown across, just pick that up. In the sanctuary, you've got name tags that we'll give you all. Make sure the fans and lights are on. Any aircon needs to be adjusted. The controllers are here, and there's one at the back, and they work for every single one. So grab a controller, click, 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 turn them on. Adjust that coolness and heating setting. The candles on the altar apparently have lights that you click underneath and click them on and click them off. Okay, so that needs to be done before and turn off. The chairs will generally be sorted, just make sure they're looking reasonable. And there's a rubber mat to put outside the double doors. There's offering boxes to put on the stool down in there and on the back. Just a quick one on the offering boxes. We're not going to have the offering box on the welcome desk. Can you see the message that gives? Okay, welcome, this is where you put your money. Okay, so that will be at the back, but we will find a different place for that than actually on the welcome desk. So if you see it on there, because this is a nice convenient flat surface, please remove it from there and put it somewhere else. For the 9 a.m., we use those retractable barriers at the back just to keep off that section. And then for the 11 a.m., that will be opened up. During the service, there's a head count that needs to happen. Now, that's not the whole team. But again, your team leader will work out with you, one of you, to do that. And there's actually a suggestion that I've got that during the service, at least one person from the team remains at the welcome desk at the back. Now, the reason I'm saying that is if you have someone who is new here for the first time with young children and they're wanting to know where to go, or they need to use the toilet or something like that, going back to that place where you've been welcomed at the beginning and having someone there who can help you with that is really important. So we'll have a stool at the back you can sit on, or the chairs, or stand around, whatever you like. But one person from each team for both the 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to be at the back and able to help as needed. Now, there is a little physical clicker to count. That's what's currently used at the moment. We're looking to actually move from that and to use a little app on the phone. And I'm not going to go into detail for that now, apart from to be able to show you very briefly what you can do. It's called Head Counts. I'll show you and send through to the team leaders and they can disseminate that. But essentially what you do is you click through on a given day, and you can just click through as you count like that. Okay, and then if you double count, you can click back. And then all that information will find its way into our planning center centralized system, and it will say how many people are here. There's a couple of practical things about that. For the 9 a.m., please do that once the kids have moved to their sessions. The reason is the kids are then already registered in their sessions, and you'll end up with a double count. For the 11 a.m., I'd suggest you do it once the worship started, or once people are sitting down. It's easier to count when people are sitting down than when they're standing up, so maybe the announcements time is a good time for that. Okay? If you stuff up and you can't work out how to do things, that's okay. We're after a general idea of numbers, not whether you double counted John or whatever, okay? So we're after to the nearest 5 or 10, and that really helps us in terms of forward planning and in terms of statistics and all those delightful things that happen behind the scenes, okay? Did you have a question, Kate, or are you just having a stretch? Why we head count? Have I answered that? Cool. Okay, and then in the ministry hall, there's a couple of things as well. Now, I've put that in the 9 a.m. team simply because when the 11 a.m. team arrives at about 10:15, 10:30, there's already lots of stuff going on there. So it's just a matter of making sure that things are done. I'm not going to go through too much more, apart from at the back, at the end, for people to be positioned at the welcome desk. We'll look at that in a minute. Open the double back doors, check a few things, and some reserved for families signs in the back section, where Suntaki is at the back at the moment there for the 11 a.m. On communion Sundays, what will happen is the communion trays, those round silver trays with all the little packs in it, will already be set up, and they will be left inside the welcome desk at the back. We're still trying to find a place for the ministry hall. Probably in the welcome desk that is yet to be built that will go in the ministry hall. And then the idea is that one person from that team will actually grab the 6 packs from the back and put them along the front. If we do that beforehand, then Grip here on Friday night or other times on Saturday, other users, it could get in the way of what they're doing or whatever. So we're just going to keep them in the back there and then set them out on the mornings. A couple of other practical things on there as well. We open 1 or 2 packs in each tray. Sometimes when you bring a tray out, there's somebody whose mobility is a little bit hard to open them, so we've got a couple of open packs. And I know for myself and for others who are leading communion, holding a microphone and trying to open a pack is super hard. So there's just some practical things there. It seems fairly detailed. Don't freak out. There will be lots of teething errors. We will work through that. But these are the sorts of things that Mei Ching and Elaine have listed for us and said, this is what we currently do. So we're trying to capture that so that we're all aware of what needs to happen. I'm going to leave it at that from those sorts of things, apart from just when it comes to lock-up, which is the 11 a.m. Within the kids' rooms at the back, the toddlers and the K to Year 1 at the back of the ministry hall, sometimes those windows are left open, and sometimes they're closed but not properly latched. Now, if they're not properly latched, they can be opened from the outside. So that's just one thing to check. And also we have some new tablets that are used for check-ins in those rooms. Sometimes they are left there. It's not if they're left there, they shouldn't be, but sometimes they are. So it's just a matter of quickly checking that and bringing them through to the office, if so. Kate? If you have a very bad day, as in? This is a really good question. Don't come to me. The team leader will hopefully be able to help with some of those things because we're looking to have people who have some experience in that space. I do know that John and Michael are going to be two of those team leaders. So if we're having 4 teams, there's 2 others. You guys will probably know. Mei Ching and Elaine will be around. Now, whilst we want to try and allow them to be themselves, if you just cannot find something, then you can just ask. Or you can ask Pastor Wendy or myself or one of the other regulars. I've had to ask some questions as well. Like, where do the signs that say reserved for families, where do they go? So apparently there's a basket in the cupboard in the back. But what we're looking to probably do is change some of that, and all those sorts of things that you need will find their way into the welcome desk, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And you can see there's shelves on there, and we're going to put some baskets in them, and that's where all the stuff that you need will go, rather than being in cupboards or in different places around the place. Does that make sense? Excellent. Boy, I'm glad I brought my wife this morning. Yes. I'm sorry, Auntie Noi? We can label the baskets, yes. So everything is nice and clear and set out and ready to go. If you have any great suggestions, again, have a chat with Michael or with John or with myself, and we can put that in place. Any other questions on those practical sides of things? David?
Just for clarification, does the welcome team distribute communion elements?
Thank you for that. Excellent question. No. Some of you as welcome team members may be asked to do that, but that is going to be facilitated through the office, and they will already have asked those people to do that during the week, and those people will also be collecting the baskets, handing the baskets around to collect the used packs afterwards. That being said, if you are on welcome team that morning, and Wendy or whoever says, and if the servers can come forward and nobody comes forward, please step up. Okay, so that your role in creating a hospitable, welcoming environment sort of requires you to be able to be alert to what may be happening and to be able to step up and help out if necessary. But that will be organized by the office beforehand, and they will be contacted beforehand. Some of you may be part of those people who do that, but it's not a function of your team ministry. Does that make sense? Excellent. Another question, yes. I am, very briefly. Okay, any other questions? Ken? Yes. Missing in action, excellent question. I'm about to move on to that, okay? But I will tackle that now very briefly. As people arrive, the best place to be is not behind a desk. At the end of the service, being behind the desk is really helpful, and that will be where people will come to for things, and we can chat about that a little bit more about why they might come to you in a minute. But beforehand, the desk is there to be able to store stuff, to have things on, but your part, if you're not physically helping with a few things, will be by 8:40 standing at the doors, welcoming people as they come in. Does that make sense? You may not. We're looking to have 4, maybe 5 people on for an 11 a.m. service. Doesn't mean all 4 of you need to be lined up by the door. You can work that out amongst yourselves, and that's part of what the team leader will chat with you about. So there's a chance to welcome there. There might be a couple others of you who are positioned at the back, ready to sort of welcome people and bring them through. Each of you can work that out as you go. We're not trying to stipulate and say, this is where you must stand, this is how it works, but we're trying to give you the framework of what needs to be covered. Does that make sense? Okay, any other questions? I understand there might be a few here, yes? Excellent question. Again, thank you. Life groups will not be responsible for finding people to be part of the welcoming team. So this morning, for example, Walkerville Life Group was on, and they were manning people for the welcome desk and things like that. That will no longer be a role of life groups. Life groups still will be allocated each week, but their role will be purely in the morning tea side of things, and there's the packing away and setting the hall back and putting the bins out and things like that is currently part of that. That will remain part of their functionality each week. But they will not be asked to provide people to serve in the welcome team. Okay? Now, the thinking and the rationale behind that is we have, for example, some young adults life groups. And therefore, we'll just have young adults serving on welcome team. And we're wanting to try and get across the generations in each team. Okay, so that's part of the reason for that. And to be able to make sure that people who are not necessarily in life groups for whatever reason can still contribute to be part of the welcome ministry. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Yes, Lydia. Good question. If you didn't quite catch that, the question was, is there a designated table through in the ministry hall that you sit people down? Now, I understand that's certainly been part of the history of the church when Cafe Manor was happening as well. There would be a particular table that you would sit down with. We're not anticipating doing that at this stage. What we are suggesting is that people can, after the service, they might have some questions to ask at the welcome desk. You can introduce them with someone else. That someone else, if remember I said at the a little earlier on, part of the role will be to then go and see them after the service. Can I bring you through for a drink or something like that? And then that will be your part to go and sit with them. Okay, and to introduce them to others and connect with. There may be a couple of other newcomers at that table, there may not be. Okay, so we're not anticipating doing that at this stage. All of this, I will say, is what we are launching with. It may well change. We're not setting any of this in concrete. Okay, at this stage, the thinking is that the welcome desk will probably be outside, unless it's raining, to start with. And it will have a welcome on the front, so that as people arrive and come in, they're seeing that. Okay? At the end, it will probably stay in the back in lieu of the blue table at the back there. And then there will be people behind that. So it's got wheels and it's built so that it can move across and up and down. But none of that is fixed in concrete. We may feel that was a great idea, but it's just not working. And so it goes somewhere else. We're also looking to have another table built to go in the ministry hall. That has not yet been built and may not be done by the 5th, but we can work around that and we can make that happen. We wanted to do one at this stage and see how functionally it is. I'm going to move on quickly. The last part really is using the welcome desk. And I've said a little bit about 2 people being at the welcome desk. So that would be afterwards. And yes, if you are at the welcome desk afterwards, the idea is quite a large desk, and it's been deliberately built that way, so you can have 2 people, 2 separate inquiries going on at the same time without being on top of each other. Hopefully, there will be enough people on team that 2 people can still be there, and then somebody else can take the others through for morning tea. Again, flexible. If there are more newcomers and you need to be with them rather than manning the welcome desk, then just the one person at the welcome desk will be fine. But the idea is that it is always there until the place is being cleared, but that you are connecting with people. That's the primary thing. So I said on there, avoid getting caught up in lengthy conversations with friends, seek out newcomers, ask if you can help. Be on the lookout for those. I mean, we've covered all this already. Michael has said, you see somebody outside on their own, go and say hi. With the welcome packs, in particular, what I'd like you to be familiar with is the life groups and their leaders. Now, that's part of what we're looking to do with the welcome packs is to make that a little bit more obvious. So you can say to somebody, it's a reasonably large church here, and one of the best ways of getting connected is being part of a life group that meets during the week. Would you like to know a little bit more about that? And they may say, no, not at this moment, that's fine. You can say, that's fine. In the welcome pack, you'll see there's a list of different groups, and we're going to provide some means of contact details that we can work out together. But I'd like each of us to be familiar with the groups that we have and familiar with who the leaders are. Now, that may be a bit of a long stretch, but we're going to try and make that as easy as possible. I've got some photos. I can probably just crop those photos and say, these are the leaders for this group, and just have a bit of a look through it, familiarize yourself with that so that you are aware and can find that information out and can point people in the direction of who they need to find. Also be familiar with the children's and youth programs that we run so that if people ask about that, you are aware of that. Hand out welcome packs as needed. Again, as people arrive, you can give them a welcome pack then by all means. Usually whoever is welcoming will invite people if they want to raise their hands, and we try not to imply that if you're new you have to raise your hands. We try to give that flexibility that if people are not comfortable doing that, they just want to just come and be, then they can find a welcome pack at the end without having to stick their hand up for it. Okay? And then one question that we did have earlier, which I just want to reiterate. Your role on team is not to be signing people up for working with children checks, or it's not to be booking rooms or things like that. That all happens through the admin team. And if people come to you and ask that, then you just politely say, can you please contact the office during the week? Don't say, go and see Mei Ching about that because she's not working. Don't say, go and see Elaine because she's not working. But just refer them through to the office during the week. And again, just be familiar with that. AACC at aacc.com.au or a phone number. Okay, that will all be in the welcome pack too. One of the things that you may be asked, what you will be asked to do, is rather than us saying, even this morning, for the seniors brunch coming up, sign up in the office, that will be changing. We'll be saying sign up at the welcome desk at the back. So you will be provided by the admin team those sign-up sheets, and you can just point people and say, just jot your name down here, or whatever it might be. So that will become a space where it's not just welcoming, but also where there will be basic information about the life of the church. So we'll put things for grip and whatever there, with separate from the welcome pack. So if someone wants to inquire about that, you've got that there. Does that make sense? Wonderful. Any other questions before we do a quick little walkthrough? Yes. Sure. So there's the welcome card will probably be in the welcome pack, but we'll also have separate welcome cards. If people want to, when they arrive, you can say, look, if you'd like to fill that out, you can do that now, or you can do that during the service, or you can do it afterwards, or you can take it home and think about it. We would encourage you to get people to sign it on the day, to fill it in on the day. So often stuff that goes home stays at home. So that's part of when you might catch up with them afterwards and you say, hey, did you have a chance to fill out the welcomers card? We'd love to get to know you a little bit more. And if they don't want to, please don't pressure them. They just need to be comfortable to be able to do that in their own space and time. King. Excellent question. We will have a spot that we will find that where you put that card. At the moment, the process is it goes through to Mei Ching and Elaine in the office. They grab those details, they forward the information to Wendy and myself, and then we will follow through on that, or we will at the very least put that information into the system somehow so that there's a record that they visited. This is part of the process that's in place. There is an opportunity on there to say, do you want to be followed up or not? Then we will seek to follow them up during the week. That process does need some tidying up and a little bit of tightening. And as we move through some new processes that we're doing in the life of the church, we will be doing that in different ways. But the intent is that they get followed through on the Tuesday that we are back, rather than waiting for a week or two to follow through.
So without being prescriptive, if you do connect with the newcomer at a very personal level, sometimes you have to change numbers. That's okay, but you're not encouraging us to do that personal follow-up, are you?
I'm not saying you can't do that follow-up. And I think if you're connecting deeply and you can follow up, I think that is an awesome thing to do. I don't think you need the church's permission, or you don't need leadership's permission to do that. That is absolutely fine. But please don't do that and then not pass the information on. Obviously, keep the information that you've had as a conversation between yourselves, but encourage them to fill that in so that one of the leaders can get in touch with them in some shape or form. But yes, if you want to connect with them and you feel you'd like to be able to catch up with them outside of Sunday mornings, please do. That is absolutely fantastic. And again, stats show that when that happens, people are much more likely to follow through and connect in because they've actually been connected by somebody as opposed to the pastor whose job it is to do this. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, Noi? Spot on. We will make sure we do that. I don't know how, but we will make sure we do that. There is a leaders chat, which has this sort of information that goes through. However, so your life group leaders will be aware of that. However, we need to find a way, and I think we will have a chat about how that best works out. But we will have, and that's part of the beauty in the structure, is that we will then communicate that to John and Michael. John and Michael will then communicate it to each of the teams. Or we can have a chat group that works. We can work out something. So absolutely, there will be some means of communication so that you are not arriving on a Sunday morning and people say, oh, they said at the welcome desk to do this. And you say, great, I haven't the clue what's going on. So, and that's part of one of the things I've done on the checklist is that before the service starts, just be familiar with any sign-ups and things that may be happening so you can be aware of that. Okay. As with all of this, there will be things that we can improve on. Okay. Make sure that gets back in the primary instance to John or to Michael, and then they will then work that out, work out a system if that needs to happen, get back to us as staff, and we can help facilitate those things. Any other burning questions? Cool. On your way out, what we'll do is rather than doing a walkthrough, because I'm aware of the time, have a bit of a look at the welcome desk. What I will say there is it's black on one side, and we're going to put some sort of logo or welcome thing on the front of that. That's the face inside, and it's been built to match, which you can see. It matches brilliantly, actually. And on the inside, it's going to be painted black on the back, and we're about to put a shelf in there as well. We're just determining the right size of that shelf. Part of the reason for that is if you are feeling a little bit difficult to keep standing for the time at the end, we're going to have those stools that you can sit on at the back. And as soon as you sit on a stool, your knees go out, and if they clonk the shelf, it's really not helpful. So we're just adjusting the height of the shelf, and it will be inbuilt a little bit. But then they will have baskets on them and all that sort of stuff. We will endeavor to get all that done by the 5th of May. If not, it will happen. It's obviously, there's quite a few different people involved in making sure all this happens. So have a bit of a look at the welcome desk on the way out. Be familiar as well if someone comes in there with their kids at 11 a.m., says, where do I do for my kids? You need to be familiar with that this is the registrations area. It's fairly self-explanatory, but we're looking to sort of revamp that as well and make that nice and clear and obvious. Any other questions as we finish? In the first instance, before you go, thank you, before we go today, please come and see me or John or Michael and write down this bit of paper if you were not at the interest meeting, you did not sign that QR code. There are a few people here that we need to capture your details on there. What we will probably do is end up creating a WhatsApp group with everybody involved in that. We may, at the moment, we're using emails. Does anyone have any objections to using WhatsApp? Rules of engagement. That is the delight of the role of the team leader. Okay, so if you are rostered on for the 8th of July, or whatever it might be, and you know that you can't make that date, then you have a chat with your team leader. Just because you're in a team doesn't mean that we can't have cross-team communication. So you know somebody who's in Team B, and they can do that. You can just arrange that swap. Just talk with the team leader, make sure they're in on that. Okay, so it's not that that can't be done, but we would like, where possible, to keep it within the team. And if you just can't do that, then work that out with your team leader. If the team leader discovers that out of their team of 7 for a given morning, only 2 can make it, I'm sure I will hear about it, and we will work something out. Okay, so there will always be this sort of trial things, but within that communication group is the way that that happens, and it sort of gets fed up through the chain. Okay. Yes, last question. Yes. So I think the best way to see that is if this group here is Team A, then you guys as a group are responsible for both the 9 and 11. But it may just be that Uncle Patrick and Auntie Noi and Auntie Amy Chua, getting the names right eventually, they're the ones who are rostered on for the 9 a.m. The rest of you are rostered on for the 11 a.m. So you don't, as an 11 a.m. person, you don't need to rock up until about 10:15, depending on what your team leader says. You guys will be here at 8:15. Okay? But then you get to go at 10:30, whereas you don't have to stay, whereas the rest of you will through. Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to leave it there. If you have any other questions, do come and have a quick chat with me. There is still some food at the back. The wraps have all gone, but there's plenty of sweet stuff. Please take that home, or I will have to inflict that on my kids. Enjoy the rest of the day. If you have any questions, do come and see me. But before you go, please come and let us know, 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be efficient, and I'm going to put this on the welcome desk at the back. As you go, can you write your name? I don't need any contact details unless you have not already given us that. Just write your name and 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. on there, and that will be the best way to do that, I think. Yes, John. Yes. Go for it. Yes. Maybe husband and wife want to be different teams. I don't know. I'm just saying. Excellent idea. Okay, so pop down that information, and then when the teams come out to you, if you feel you need to change, get in touch with Michael and John. They'll work it all out. The teams are not necessarily set in concrete. Team A is orange, I'll just say that. All good, thank you.